It is the first day of the month of Nocturus. A scout keeps watch over the road leading to Slautawa, when suddenly he sees an enemy army emerge. He quickly mounts his horse and rides to warn of the incoming force. Azrael's army is minutes away from reaching the town. The Battle of Slautawa, which will decide the fate of the third Tsardom of Ryzani, is about to begin. It's the morning of the 5th day of Arias. A thick fog covers the calm waters of the Vologdan Bay. An Eremithian fleet carries the old Ryzani war veteran, Azrael Arden Astera, and prepares to land in the ruins of Novovoreska. The sun rises and illuminates Ryzan's beautiful landscape. Azrael had not seen his home since the Battle of Tossigrad and the fall of the Second Tsardom. As he nears the coast, the future of Siltor is about to change forever. Azrael's army consisted of remnants of the 9th Commandos, Ryzan's most elite fighters, a contingent of Huskarls from the Brotherhood of Wolfang, and Eremithian volunteers that served under Arden and the Okarts. Soon after making camp, Azrael receives word that Jospai Liberium's presidential inauguration was to be held soon in Carthia. In Azrael's eyes, Liberium and the rest of the corrupt and incompetent nobility were the rot that was destroying his home. Azrael saw but one solution. On the 9th of Arias, Jospar Liberium delivers his presidential inauguration speech when suddenly, several heavily armored men can be seen landing on the city walls. They stare down at the crowd for what seemed like an eternity for the frightened nobles and civilians. Jospar quickly runs inside to seek refuge as the attackers descend and immediately start massacring the spectating nobles and civilians alike, as Azrael charges directly for Jospar but is stopped by General Geo Shan. After the attempted coup at Carthia, having survived and retreated to Castle Liberium, Jospar declares martial law throughout the Tsardom, but unknowing of Azrael's forces in the south, he makes no attempt at assembling an army, instead relying on the military police to handle the situation. In the south, Azrael wastes no time and quickly begins making his next moves. Soren Tempest is to take the forces from the Brotherhood of Wolfang and capture the southernmost towns, while Azrael travels north to Volkorigrad to request assistance from his old friend, Lord Albertrex. When Soren reaches the town of Kirov, not a single soul is spared. This was one of the biggest atrocities committed by the Azraelites. The southern towns are shocked by this barbaric display of force. When Soren reaches the fort of Rastan, the local lord offered no resistance, and the elite riders of Rastan joined Soren's force. To the north, Volkorigrad had joined Azrael, and he now prepares to move on the important border town of Bjornsburg. As Soren nears the city of Tossigrad, an envoy hastily delivers a message. Having heard of the massacre at Kirov and fearing a similar fate, Nikolai Tosevich declares neutrality and allows a small force to occupy the great city. On the march to Bjornsburg, crossing a large bridge just north of Volkorigrad, Azrael's forces are ambushed. The bridge is demolished and results in the death of most of the Eremithian volunteers. After securing the south, Azrael would return to camp and assemble his entire force. His next objective was to capture the city of Carthia. On the march to Carthia, Azrael would leave a trail of destruction along his path in order to send a message that would be heard throughout the remains of the Tsardom. Resistance would not be tolerated. With the news of the fall of southern Ryzan reaching Carthia and the approaching Azraelite army, the local garrison closed the city gates and prepared to defend the city. They could now see the approaching army on the road. The cavalry at the vanguard seemed to be positioning itself to guard the western road. Azrael begins his assault on the city walls with his lighter infantry, while the 9th Commandos and Huskarls were to break through the gates. As the ladders were positioned and Azrael's troops scaled the walls, they could see that some of the defenders were being thrown from the walls. Apparently, Howard de Medici, a commanding officer along with his men, had switched side and started pushing defenders off the walls. Panic spread through the walls, and just as quickly as it began, the city had already fallen. The gates were opened and Azrael's army poured through the gates. Like with most sieges, the city was sacked and plundered by the attackers. The smoke would take days to clear. After the Battle of Carthia, no time was wasted, and Azrael's army was soon marching for Slautawa, the heart of the Nebskoslavian region. With news of the approaching force, the Lord of Wellstone sends reinforcements to Slautawa and requests assistance from the Lord of Galatians. Reinforcements from Galatians, however, would unfortunately never arrive. Azrael leaves behind a contingent of light infantry to occupy the town of Zaburia and protect the army's supply lines. Sorin detaches from the main force, along with the riders of Rastan, and secretly crosses the river to the south, and moves to position itself south of the city. To the north, General Gio Shan arrives with reinforcements from Castle Liberium, and hastily moves towards Slautawa, rallying troops from local cities and towns along the way. By the time General Gio arrives at Slautawa, local Ryzani forces had already been pushed to the outskirts of the town. Morale was shattered and some Ryzani begin to flee the battle. Gio arrives right on time and begins to rally the fleeing troops. With the general and his reinforcements in sight, the Ryzani troops are filled with courage and begin to hold the line against Azrael's forces. Now, all Gio has to do is hold the line and wait for his flanking force to arrive. Just to the south of the town, the flanking Ryzani forces were to enter the town using a large hill as cover. Their objective was to block the bridge and attack Azrael forces from the rear. As the Ryzani troops neared the hill, Captain Azarov, who was in charge of setting parts of the town on fire, had spotted them and quickly called for assistance. Sorin had also spotted the flanking force and quickly pursued them. By the time they reached the hill, the Ryzani detachment had found itself completely surrounded. Infantry to their front, the riders of Rastan to their rear, and archers firing from atop the hill. It was a short but fierce fight, which resulted in the entire detachment being destroyed. With the flanking force not arriving, the main Ryzani force to the north could no longer hold and was shattered by Azrael's forces. Gio and a small group of Ryzanis survive the battle and flee to Castle Liberium. Shortly after the Battle of Slautawa, the city of Galatians surrenders to Azrael. Now, all of Nepskoslavia falls under Azrael's control. Azrael then prepares to march on Castle Liberium, the Tsardom's last significant foothold. It's early morning on the 11th of Nocturus. A light rain and mist covers Castle Liberium and the mountains of Remtol. Azrael, Arden, and Astera's army can be seen reaching the foot of the mountain. Only a handful of Ryzanis man the castle walls. Azrael has broken through the castle, and now only Gio remains. Azrael gives the order. His men attack the general but are struck down with ease. After fighting a few waves of soldiers, the general's exhausted, pushed to the edge of the walls. He stares Azrael in the eyes, curses his name, and reaffirms his loyalty to the Tsardom. With General Shan Gio dead, the Ryzani civil war had come to an end. In only a few short months, Azrael, Arden, Astera had control over Ryzan and proclaimed the creation of the Empire of Ryzan.